JC here again for retirecheap.asia. Guess who we got? I don't know if you've seen the interviews with Bruce before. He's a future ripper, retiree in paradise. And I always say that there's four stages people are going to go through if they make a decision or they decide to come over here. One is the decision-making process. Then they're going to go back and with some information, and they're going to plan what they need to do to get everything in order, to have their finances in order and everything. And then the last step is packing everything up, preparing to come over, and then settling in once they got here. Well, as most people probably know from watching these, the first time I interviewed you, you'd already sort of made the decision and you came over. And so now you have some information. You've been here for how long?
Almost 3 months.
Almost 3 months, okay. And we did an interview about halfway through that 3 months to see, how things were going. And so now you've sort of gathered enough information to go back and create a plan to make this a reality. Do you still want it to be a reality to come over here and spend time? How do you feel now after 3 months?
Much better. Many questions have been answered that I can, with firm facts and checked out reality, know that I can sort of finish my plan. I'm heavily invested in Thailand, in education and trips of coming here, and my comfortableness level rises every time. And so the decision to come here is made, and the plan to work on coming here is well underway. And now I got numbers that I can know that my lifestyle will be a level as good or better than in the States. And I can go back and with a few more adjustments and preparation for the actual move, then run numbers backwards and arrive at a date at when that can actually happen.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what I try and tell people. It's like, come over and hang out long enough where you can actually feel what's comfortable for you, what level, what size room, what kind of transportation, what kind of restaurants do you want to eat at, so that you get numbers that you can go back and crunch and say, okay, it's going to take me $700 a month to live here, or $1,200 a month to live here. And that way you say, okay, how do I generate that money? So it's sort of reverse engineering this thing. And at the halfway point, you sort of had figured that out. You'd sort of settled into a comfort zone. You realized that by paying bigger increments of time on a monthly basis, so to speak, you could actually get a break on some of these costs. And so now that your time is coming to an end, how many more days before you're actually on the plane back home?
About 11 or 12, I believe.
Okay, 11
10
or 12
days, something like that. I'm going to go to Pattaya for 9 days.
Okay, so having spent time, did you make the decision that this is sort of the area of the north that you want to live in? And if so, why?
Well, I like it because it has the big city and all the conveniences thereof, but it is off the beaten track of most of the tourist places. There's plenty of tourism around here, but it's easier to get away from those tourist things, and they're not as overpowering, overbearing.
It's a different kind of tourism in the north.
That's right.
More trekkers, wholesome kind of travelers.
Yeah, more cultural seekers up here, and the weather is
weather's
better.
Horrible, isn't it?
The wintertime, this is the best weather I've ever experienced in Thailand.
I wait all year for this weather, and it just kicked in about 3 or 4 weeks ago. The wind starts to clock instead of out of the south where we got this humid, hot air. It actually clocks around out of the north, out of China, and we start getting really cool air, which is our winter here. And if you've ever been in central Florida in the wintertime, where it's warm during the day and cool at night, that's sort of like what we're experiencing now, with a little drop in humidity, right?
Drop in humidity.
And you want to go back to the snow and everything, right?
Oh, yes, I'm just overpowered with joy to go back.
And
It's
actually, back home in America, I don't know from what country you're watching this, but back home in America today is Thanksgiving. And because I'm not in America, I actually call it Thanksgiving Day because I give thanks today for being able to live a lifestyle that I'm comfortable with and can afford. So I call it Thanksgiving Day, and hopefully I'm going to try and whip together some stuffing to go with our chicken for later on. But so, what sort of reinforced on this trip? What sort of reinforced that this is the right thing for you?
reinforced.
You sort of had the idea. What sort of locked it in? That yeah, I want to do this and I can do it. Because those are the two things. One is, do I want to? People come over and they sort of experience it and say, yeah, this is for me or not. And it's not for everybody, as you know. But then there's a point where you go, yeah, I want to do it and I can do this because the numbers are doable.
Well, that was, the real meaning came to the numbers by putting in a month here on $600
Hmm.
and going, well, I had a good time. I didn't do a whole lot of stuff outside of my normal routine as if I was living in an apartment at home,
Mm-hmm.
but my quality of life was superior to
Mm-hmm.
living in an apartment at home.
Mm-hmm.
There was more things to see and do that I enjoy and found joy in doing, and yet I could do all the other things that I enjoyed doing.
Mm-hmm.
Here, this place is same but different.
Yeah, yeah. They have
It's
T-shirts and stuff here that say same but
Yeah,
different, and
it's
there's a
not
lot.
exactly the same, but you can go to a big place like the Tasco Lotus that's like a Walmart and use your ATM card to pay just like you do there.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't go out and get into your SUV and take it all home. You sort of put some in the backpack and some in the basket on the motorbike, and you take smaller increments and you go every few days instead of once a week or twice a month or something like that. So you alter your normal routines, and you fall into a pattern that you go, this nice lifestyle, and
Mm-hmm.
you go to the mark or the street fair on Sunday and have a little different type of food, and you go to the oh, I have a hankering for this type of food. Well, I know a food cart now that down this way. I'll go there tonight. And
Yeah, and I'm actually going to do a whole video about the food carts and what is available on the street for street food because people ask, is it safe to eat? And I've mentioned before that the only places I've actually got sick were in chain restaurants because they have walk-in coolers where they can actually store food for long periods of time. Where the little guys on the street, they actually have to buy it fresh every day, and so it actually is a lot fresher food. Did you like eating that style, that
oh
style of
yeah,
eating?
unless you're some first world ideologue that feels that the Thai peasant is this lesser person than you. If you don't feel that way about other people, then you won't have any problem eating like they do.
Hmm.
They don't get sick. They
Hmm.
wouldn't go back to the cart
That's right.
that they got sick at.
Hmm.
And it's varied. One day you can eat on this street off of these carts, and the next day you can find another area of town where they have a specialty there.
Yeah, I have a
And
special cart for every kind of food.
yeah,
I got my noodle cart, I got
it's
my pad
varied.
thai
It's
cart,
never
and
boring.
it's never boring. Yeah. So overall, about your experience this time with the culture and the people. Um, I go into a lot of this stuff in the membership section. I want to talk about the specifics of being here,
Hmm.
whether to be insured or not insured. I will go into, about using a telephone over here and mailing and all those particulars. But what I want to give from you is basically your experience of Thailand in general. I know you had a lot of memories from Thailand from when you had been over here before. And did it live up to your memories? And how did you interact with the Thai people? How did that go?
Uh, well, yes, it lived up to my memories, but this trip I was looking for new memories, more of a focus on the Thai culture itself and not the tourism industry and the people involved with that. So I started taking special note in the common ordinary Thai person and how they might live and what they do. And I didn't see anybody that didn't have a job. They were
Hmm.
all working at
Hmm.
something. Even the beggars, that was their job,
Yeah, that was their
to
job.
beg.
Yeah.
And but it was, if you understand that, then you know.
Hmm.
Uh, and I also noticed that their acceptance and their caring for different factions of their own culture.
Hmm.
The handicapped
Hmm.
are not excluded and tucked away somewhere and not seen. They're
Hmm.
out in society and provided for and helped and included in society as much as anybody else.
Yeah, and up here in Chiang Mai, there's actually an organization where if somebody is handicapped, they can take donations, or if you have the money, you can have it made where your wheelchair rolls right up onto a ramp that's attached as a sidecar on a motorbike with all the controls, so even people that are handicapped can drive motorcycles around here. And so, they don't just ignore them. There are some barriers of entry because of stairs and stuff, but the thing about it is, Thai people are so congenial that if you actually were in a wheelchair and you rolled up to something, somebody's going to help you out. They're not worried about that whole thing of, oh, I can't touch you because of the liability. If you fall over, you're going to sue me. That doesn't happen here. So, they're more than willing to help you. I was eating the other day in a restaurant, and an older gentleman, he was probably in his upper 80s, and he ate. He had trouble getting in the door and trouble getting back out, and one of the restaurant helped him up out of his chair, all the way out the door, down the sidewalk to get into a tuk-tuk, a little three-wheel taxi kind of thing, if you don't know what tuk-tuks are, and helped him get in there, and didn't even think anything about it. That's sort of like, you just help the people that need help, and that's sort of the basic culture. Now there's aberrations to that, and you go around tourist areas and they sort of lose some of that, but especially up in the north, they continue those kinds of values and traditions, and that's why I prefer to be up in the north. But well, I hope I was helpful during this trip as well.
Glad you brought that up because yes, you were incredibly so, and I was able to firsthand verify that you are who you come across being on the videos. You're not just some guy that lives in a fancy thing and talks about eating at a streetcar and then goes into some fancy restaurant and scarfs down lobster or something. You're living the life you're talking about,
Hmm.
and you are who you say you are, and you've been here the length of time that you say you've been here, and you've learned from that, and the best part is you're sharing it with other people, and that come across on the videos to me, but I had to know if that's the real you, and it is, and I'm
Well, I
pleasantly
appreciate that.
surprised to find out.
Yeah, well, that's the idea. I'm not gonna, tell somebody to do one thing and me do something else. It's like, I think the reason that people actually enjoy the videos is because they're sort of experiencing this the way I do, and that's the point, is to see the world through sort of my eyes. There's other ways to do it, and there's other ways to live here,
Sure.
but this is how I've chosen, and it's sort of been my lifestyle, from the time I delivered boats to the Caribbean, as a kid. I've always had a kind of lifestyle that was adventurous, but didn't cost a lot to maintain,
Hmm.
and so I still enjoy that adventurous lifestyle.
Yeah,
And
being a traveler, you learn how to, to get the most out of life without a lot of baggage
yeah,
carrying around with you. You don't need it.
and being around Tony Robbins for about 12 years, working with him, it's like this thing about helping people has become, a big part of my life, and I figured, well, this is a real big need right now, that people really do need to have options, and it's getting greater every day, and things are getting worse, which is creating that bigger need every day. So if I can help out some way, and hopefully I've been helpful to you since you've been here. We've had a lot of conversations during this time. You caught me at a really good time.
I was
I
very
was,
lucky in
I
that
was
regard.
chained down trying to get that membership site open, and it's like he'd get calls up, hey, I got to take a break. Are you hungry? And so we'd hook up and have some good conversations, and it also helped me as well because it made me realize, from a person in your situation, your point of view, what you need to know to make this happen, and I'm going to go into detail in the membership section again about, how to create online income. And we had a lot of conversations about that, and I hope those were helpful to you as well. And it also made me, why we were having those conversations, organize it in a way that I think people can use the information as well, because now, greater than any time in history, is a great time to be able to generate online income, and which is really conducive to this kind of lifestyle.
I'm glad I could help you with that, because you've definitely helped me with sorting through and organizing and having more clarity in the direction and the process of how to go about, doing what I want to do through a blog site, but not exactly what you're doing. You're your website's too complicated for me. I'm not that
It's too
technically
complicated.
savvy,
It's too complicated for me.
and I'll need lots of technical help even on what I want to do. But we had a lot of talks about how to write and how to not give up all the information at once, or to stage it along and start from the beginning. And have
Yeah, well, you have a
middle and
story,
an
and
end.
I mentioned that a lot of people can relate to what Bruce has gone through, and where he's headed is because with relationships, coming unglued. A lot of them are coming unglued because of finances now. That's one of the biggest stresses in relationships is money, and so that's putting a strain on people's relationships, and then also loss of jobs, and a lot of other factors are creating. And you've sort of gone step by step until you finally said, okay, can't go down this road anymore. We got to stop, put the brakes on this, and create a different lifestyle. And you've really been working for the last couple of years to make that happen. And this was actually part of that plan. And so you're going to go back now. You've sort of done the deciding before you ever got here. Now you've got information for the planning process. So you'll be finishing that up and then wrapping things up, putting the ducks in a row to prepare to come over. Is that right?
To create action.
Yeah.
And now I know where I'll go and what I'll do, and when I get here, what I'll do.
Yeah.
To create within 1 year, uh, everything takes time, but when I arrive, I'll have a plan for what I'll do here, to where 1 year after I've been here, I'll have things, set up to where there's a life, a life that's intellectually and creatively stimulating.
So what are you going to miss by heading home?
There's,
You're anxious to get back, right?
I am leaving with
I'm being
absolutely no
facetious.
joy in my heart for going home.
You said something the other day, and I totally related, because that's the decision I made. And at that moment that I had that epiphany or that insight is when I made the decision to live here. That you actually said to me the other day that you feel like you're not going home,
I'm
that you're sort
leaving
of
home.
leaving home. And that I remember sitting on a tarmac in an airplane, looking out the window after a 3-month trip, almost the same amount of time you had. And I didn't feel like it was time to go home yet. And it's like, man, I feel like I'm leaving home. This feels more like home than home. And that's when I made the decision to actually,
Hmm.
live over in
Well,
another part of the world.
things are strange back home in the U.S., and a lot of the security and things that you felt comforted by and could count on and depend on and anticipate at home aren't there anymore.
Now, let me ask you
Yeah.
about a couple of things now that you brought that up. Security, more or less here or there. Which one do you feel more secure? And whatever your definition of security is, because we all have different definitions of it.
I feel less secure at home.
Really,
I
you're less secure
feel
at home.
more of
How
a
about
need to have
connection? Now,
protection.
these. I'm going to actually talk about. I've talked about this before about values and what you need to have fulfilled in your life on a daily basis. And these are some of people's values. These are going to be some common ones. How about connection? Connection is important for people. More
Uh,
connected or less connected, here or there.
it is very much easier to have a social life here than and get out, and you can take it as far as you want, but it's so easy, and you meet interesting people from around the
Around the
world.
world. That's right.
I met a guy that was a British guy that was living in Vancouver, uh, Canada, and he's an airline pilot, or not an airline pilot, but a flight instructor.
Oh.
And he gave me his card, and we had a very interesting
It's easy to
conversation
strike
on
up
general
conversations
aviation
with
and things
people,
like
right?
that. Oh, it's easy
People sort
to,
of, even the foreigners, let their guard down a little bit when they get over here because it's
yeah, everybody
culturally or
tends to
socially
relax.
acceptable to talk to strangers. So that's another good thing. So we had security, we have connection. How about adventure or excitement?
Oh, as much of that as you want. You can jump on your motorbike and an hour later be out in pristine jungle where there's vines hanging out of the trees and crystal clear springs splashing over waterfalls and little trails and
We lost a lot of people
just
watching because they went scrambling back into the room to find their passports as you're speaking,
yeah.
It's like, let me out of here,
You can trek, you can kayak. I had a guy ask me yesterday if I wanted to go kayaking Friday, and I told him I had to do a visa run, and so there's all kinds of things that if you just get yourself out of the room and say hello to somebody, before you know it, you'll be asked to do something,
hmm
and then all you got to do is just show up, and you'll be
hmm
doing it.
And a lot of foreigners come over, they don't have a social network yet. So meeting them and hooking up to have a cup of coffee or something is really easy because people want to make a connection.
Yeah, and it's easy. More Thais than you know speak enough English to have a conversation with.
hmm
You just don't need to be afraid. A lot of them are looking for an opportunity to use what English they do have.
hmm
And if you know a little bit of Thai between the two, you can have a surprisingly interesting conversation.
Yeah, yeah,
And like the guest house, the lady that runs the guest house, I had a nice conversation with her, and I told her how much I appreciated, how she run her business and how she made me feel by keeping everything clean and organized and the guests under control, and was fair with pricing for me. And she even said that she could do better on the price if I would rent for 6 months. So,
So she's going to give it to you for free.
well,
Because you
not
can't get much better than what
I
you're
I
doing.
know, but that
I'm just kidding.
the thing is if you open up to people and you talk to them and you let them know you appreciate what they did, and I tend to watch a lot of businesses and how they operate and
And it's the
how
antithesis
people
of
are
that. They want to
treated.
get more, not
Right.
give it.
And by doing that, I showed her that I had brought another guy, David, that you
hmm
interviewed the other day, and showed this house. He was curious on what my guest house was like, and I showed him around, and then that I told the lady at my guest house about that, and Prani, and
Yeah, she
so
appreciates
she
it for sure.
knows
And well,
that
that's the
I'm
marketing.
trying to
Sure.
run business her way
hmm
too. So, and that's sort of how it works,
hmm
and you get this relationship with somebody, and then I show back up the next time, and I bet she'll know my
Oh,
name,
she'll remember your name for sure.
and
hmm
she'll get me a room, and she's got to throw somebody out.
Well, Bruce, I know you're going to miss Thailand, and Thailand's going to miss you,
uh, I'll
And
be back soon, as soon as I
yeah,
can
it's been
crunch the numbers and make it work.
well, it's been an interesting 3 months. It was nice to get to know you. And any final words you'd like to say to the people out there before we sign off?
You need to come to Thailand. Come, experience it, and then you'll really know if it works for you. When you first arrive, it'll be overwhelming and it'll set you back a little bit, but forge on because it gets easier. The, the strange becomes less strange till it finally becomes normal. And I fell in love with it 27 years ago. And here I am, still loving my 27-year-old friend, Thailand.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I love it more now and in different ways, but the, I still have passion for
Well,
it
good.
to learn more. And there's a place for me here, to finish out my life.
Well, good.
And so,
That's comforting to know as well. So, no matter how things get back home, no matter how bad things get, you got to keep in mind that there are options available, and there are ways to be able to get by with less money. We do have to start thinking about slashing some of the expenses. Who knows when you're going to have a job again, or when the retirement checks are going to be kicking in. So no matter how bad things get, remember, there's always an option. JC out, and Bruce
Out.